Great start already. It's the end of another long day. Another hopefully entertaining and amusing episode of Better Tech, Better Living. I'm Hans Ekman, and I am joined by two amazing people from the Uncommon League. Jen and Paul, love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Paul, I think you should go first. I've decided.
Okay, I'll go first.
Introduce the dog behind you as well.
The dog behind me, who's really sick and tired of listening to my voice, that's Sophie, who's hiding behind the file cabinet. Like, that must be quieter back there, so she can't hear me. Yeah, I'm Paul Crosby with the Uncommon League, co-founder with Jen, who's right next to me there in the Hollywood squares that you see right before you. I don't know what you guys want to know about me. I'm the instructor here on some of the project management stuff and Agile kind of stuff, and founder with Jen, also founder with Jen on the Sing Your Life Foundation that is coming out here shortly for Bob, getting that put together. And, that's who I am. I've had a long career in project management and telecommunications and all that fun and exciting stuff. And the good news is that when you misdial a number in the 550 exchange, you no longer hear my voice. Yes, it's awesome.
But for a long time you did.
Yeah, it was there for like a decade after, more than that, after I left the phone company. So hilarious on that one. And hey, Amy, how are you? Saying hi to Amy out there in Toronto land. Yay!
Hello, excellent.
Go ahead, Jen.
I love it. Hi, I'm Jen Battan. I think, let's see, I put, when the tool asked me for my it didn't ask for my title, it asked for my industry, I think, and I just went with Flipperty Gibbet because that's kind of the mood I'm in today. And so I am, as Paul mentioned, I am a co-founder, and I am the Creativity Officer. That would be, oh my gosh, Hans gets started something. I'm the Chief Creativity Officer for the Uncommon League now. So I have been doing business analysis related stuff for the past, we're gonna say couple decades-ish. We say ish, we're not dating ourselves here. But I've also, the Agile stuff, the creative problem solving, innovation, that's really where I found my sweet spot and what kind of gets me excited about the work that we do and helping other people to do their jobs better as well. And work doesn't have to be boring. We spend way too much of our time at work, so it shouldn't be boring. It should be fun. And still Absolutely. Work, but I mean, we can have fun doing it. We're totally allowed.
Well, and I apologize that my speech impediment and dyslexia has apparently infected your computers. I would suggest updating your virus protection just to make sure that it doesn't affect everyone out there in cyberland. For those who haven't been able to come to an Uncommon conference or seen you at, we've got Amy Riddell on, who hosts some amazing conferences across US and Canada, which is actually how all of us, for the most part, met and became friends. What is the Uncommon League? And tell us a little bit about it, because you all have set up more of an untraditional, you already mentioned, fun approach to learning and helping people in their professional lives. Give us a highlight of how that happens and how that works.
Well, we love to break the rules.
Exactly. There is a little bit. It is a little bit about breaking the rules. And one of the things that we kind of talk about in what we're doing, there are a lot of people out there that can train in a collegiate professorial kind of, sorry, in my head, I'm hearing the Charlie Brown wah, 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 wah. And that's not exciting training. It's theory training, and theory is important. Absolutely, you need to understand why a technique will work or why vision is important. You should understand that, yes. But it's one thing to say, vision is important, you need a vision, and then move on to the next topic, or say, okay, how do I create a vision? How do I understand that? I always think of it as we bring theory to practice in a practical way with a hands-on approach, and you're gonna laugh, you're gonna have fun, you're gonna groan at my horrible jokes, I promise, because apparently I'm not funny at all, according to my children. But we hope that in the effort of doing something a little bit different, a little bit more hands-on, taking these different approaches, different ways to learn, different ways to teach, that's kind of where what we always try to do. And in everything that we expand, when we create an uncommon conference, when we create a workshop, we'll create a workshop and then we'll look at it and we'll say, is it uncommon enough? And if it feels familiar, we'll change it. We'll do something different and try to figure out what will make it more exciting, what will help you learn better, what will make something stick better. I always think back to in college, I took a history class where one of my professors, it was a graduate assistant, was she's like, okay, you guys read the book for the really important stuff. I'm going to touch on a couple of dates, but then I'm going to tell you all the stuff that you're actually going to remember, tie it back into the reading, and then you'll pass the exam. And sure enough, that was what worked, because you don't necessarily remember dates and events. And, so for us, things like the process, the how to do something, you'll remember the weird story that Jen told about that one time that she threw a stapler across the room. You'll remember the story. Okay, what technique was she talking about with the stapler? But you'll get it. You'll remember the weird story. You'll remember the odd thing. I've only thrown one stapler and it did not hit its intended target, and everything was fine. No one was hurt in my stapler throwing.
No injuries. It wasn't at me either, so that was.
It was
good.
not at Paul. I hit Paul, but that's another story altogether. And that's next time you see us at one of Amy's conferences, catch us in the bar, and we'll happily tell you about the time I hit Paul.
Hilarious. Yeah, I mean, from the stories that we have, our experiences are what make the topic come to life. And, we all have a unique experience, a unique perspective on many different things in our careers. And especially, me, it was, the moment of trying to fit a server into an elevator and discovering that, the entire server rack had to be taken apart and re-put back together because, you wouldn't think that you'd have to measure the elevator to see if it would fit in there. You'd be like, hey, it's a freight elevator. It would fit all freight, right? Not so much. Bad assumption there. And that's when I learned when assumptions are really bad. But it's the stories that we tell. And, our last conference that we had was a storyteller conference. And we talked about how you tell the stories to your stakeholders, to your sponsors, to folks on your team, and how do you use those stories to get them to understand not only what it is that you're trying to achieve, but how you're going to get there and work together so that you as an entire community, as a group, can tell a story together.
Well, and I think that's a phenomenal lesson. And as you've seen, it's probably been a theme throughout a lot of these shows. We had Leslie Hughes, a LinkedIn and branding specialist. We had Amy on talking about speakers, and that ability to tell stories, that ability to relate to the audience, that ability to make it fun and engaging is something that we can all learn from and really focus in on.
Absolutely.
You all are dealing with a lot of diverse groups. You deal with companies and sometimes enterprise events. You deal with a lot of individuals, whether it's through classes or your coaching program. The last, we'll say, year has been interesting. A lot of changes, a lot of adjustments, a lot of organizations have had to reprioritize, and individuals too. What are some of the trends that you're seeing come out of this that IT professionals or individuals should be looking at or considering moving forward?
Well, for me, when I talk with my peers on the CFO Council and kind of the trends that I'm seeing, is it's become a hybrid world. There's no longer a hard, fast role for a project manager or a hard, fast role for a business analyst. These roles are disciplines, and the disciplines are important, and they, leaders understand the discipline is critical to the success of their organization and getting things done, but the individual doesn't necessarily have that entire discipline to themselves. It's sort of something that's now you're a jack of all trades. You're expected to know project management, business analysis, agile, waterfall, iterative, just on some of the frameworks. You're expected to know things on UX and behavior and design. And you're expected to know things on DevOps and operationalizing things and organizational change and leadership and conflict management. And you think about that, that's an awful lot of stuff to be resting on someone's shoulders. I told Jen the other day, one of our clients, we were having a class with them, and we were, kind of going through what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I said, I don't know if I could work in today's environment to have, there's all these things that you have to do. You have all the analysis side and the project management side and the leadership side, where in the past, we could focus very finitely on a very specific discipline. In today's world, that's just not something that we have the luxury of doing anymore. We prefer the jack of all trades. We prefer the flexibility. A lot of organizations have even gotten rid of the titles themselves. They don't even have the title business analyst or project manager in their organization. Everybody's a team member. And,
which HR loves, I'm convinced, by the way.
Oh, HR just,
because had a are you a senior team member? How do we know that you're going to get a raise or whatever? What salary tier are you in? It's incredibly confusing. And to tag on to what Paul said, there's a lot of, we have to be willing to pick up, and we can't just say, not my job. I don't do that. There's somebody else that will do that. We have to be a little bit more self-sufficient, which means that we have to learn more skills. But at the same time, if we have to pick up something that I'm going to say, not comfortable with, maybe we don't have the depth of knowledge or whatever, we have to be willing to ask for help from maybe somebody who does know, or get the training, or be able to make a case for, if I need to do this, then there's more to it than just me, hang on a minute, allow me to use Professor Google to figure out what I need to do here. Because Professor Google can only help so much, and Google's awesome. You can look up, you can find a lot of information. You can find good information and bad information. Let's not forget that. When you find articles online or whatever, that might tell you the how to do something, but it won't necessarily tell you how to apply it in a specific situation. So I think all of that is, a little bit of that reality that's coming into play.
And I think what's happening is, because these roles are sort of, this jack of all trades merging into one thing, the practical approaches, the pragmatic approaches that are needed for folks to take are far different than the approaches of the past, right? Historically, you as a project manager had some pretty hardcore techniques and things that you would do. And, that was true of QA, business analysis, the whole 9 yards. And in today's world, it's like, no, you're doing all of this stuff, and now you have to get it done in an 8-hour day. You need something that's very practical. It's easy. It's collaborative. It works over, the Zoom meetings, the WebEx meetings that we all have from different, hours upon hours. And that's sort of, driving that forward for folks to have this sort of, okay, yeah, I need to do it, but I don't need to do it in a super fancy way. I just need to get it done.
Yeah. And I think that the tool piece is probably the biggest shocker, I guess, for a lot of people. There were, I have some varied interests, and, I've worked in a lot of different industries. And so my Twitter feed is kind of wild. And I follow a lot of academia on Twitter because I've worked in the education industry and know a lot of people in those kinds of roles. And when the shutdowns first started happening and people were shifting to online school, or shifting to, well, I go into the office every day and now you want me to do what? You want me to do virtual meetings? there were people who had never had the experience that probably everyone out there, I think most of us, just so many of us, out of all of the people who do business analysis, especially across IT organizations, depending on your industry, at least half of us have been on some sort of a WebEx call, or we're on conference calls relatively regularly. And I would say it's probably well over 50%. And that's me making up numbers, so that's a verifiable, not at all statistic. But we because to me, I was like, oh, okay, no worries. I was already doing virtual training. So shifting into 100% virtual training to me was, okay, so I'm going to do more of the same thing I used to do. For a lot of analysts that were used to, we're going to go into a conference room and I'm going to bring sticky notes and I'm going to bring Sharpie markers and I'm going to bring, I'm going to do stuff on a whiteboard or whatever. They were like, but where are the sticky notes, right? We have had to learn a lot more about different tools that are available out there, which sometimes means doing what we all call the life hack, or learning, using something that's not exactly meant to work in a certain way. I'm not saying hacker like bad hacker, but like the good hack. It's like, oh, this thing has a specific, purpose, and we're going to use it for this other thing instead. That kind of a life hack. Or convincing the company to purchase better tools because we can't support the work that we have to do unless we have the right tools available to us. So there are so many tools out there that are available. But the other thing is, if you can't get those tools, how do you shift into a virtual world? If they got you Zoom or they got you WebEx, you never had that before, but you only get the Office tools. Hey, every technique I teach can be done in Excel. I know, because I used to do every one of those techniques in Excel and not in a super fancy whiteboarding tool. You just have to be willing to try. I guess is a little bit of the lesson there. So yeah, that's been my year.
Well, Steve Jones points out he's watching on YouTube that unfortunately some people can't even master Google, let alone some of the other tools, and they're going to need a little extra coaching moving along.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are so many different tools out there that are, available. There's thousands of them. But I think that, the tool itself is not the silver bullet. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can do this with pigeons and index cards if you really need to do it. I mean, it's whatever your team is comfortable with. And I think that's what it's gotten down to, is a lot of people have tried these standards, like we are only going to use Teams and that is it. And have quickly discovered that that's not effective for some of their organizational teams. They're just like, hey, this is not the way we think. It's not the way that we work. Just give me my PowerPoint back and let me just put it in a PowerPoint thing and we'll have a meeting that way. It's really up to the team to choose the right tools for them. It's every team is unique. Every team has its own unique personality, and of course the personalities of the individuals on that team as well. That plays into the tools that make you successful and that are the most effective.
I think this is the third time this week that I've heard Paul mention pigeons, and I want to know where he's keeping all the pigeons.
It's nothing but true dove. True dove.
I know. I was just but I mean, that it really comes down to it. I mean, I've always used the phrase that is, I did not coin this phrase. I heard it somewhere else, but I quote it often, that you still have to understand what you're trying to do and understand your goal, because a fool with the tool is still a fool. Yes. So you have to know what you're trying to accomplish. And so if you can't get to appropriate requirements analysis, or if you can't write and organize user stories using sticky notes or note cards, or heck, an Excel spreadsheet, Jira will not save you. You can hope that it will, but I've had a client who was like, yeah, so we're having a lot of trouble with this, so we're going to go ahead and implement Jira. And I was like, stop. What are you having trouble with? In my head, I yelled, stop. I didn't yell it out loud to them, but in my head, there was this, siren going on. I said, so tell me more about what you mean by we're having trouble with user stories. Tell me more about that. Well, we're doing this and doing this. And I was like, all right, and you think Jira's going to solve this? Well, yeah, everybody uses Jira. Okay, let's stop right there. Let's stop. I could not stop from implementing Jira, but at the same time, you still have to understand the rest of it. You still have to understand that that, and I'm picking on poor Jira. I'm sorry. Jira is awesome. It's fabulous. Everyone should use it. You know, just in case the Jira cops are out there listening in, right? You know, but if you can't do this with you know, a plain old whiteboard or sticky notes or whatever, the tool will just force you into something, and it might end up confusing you even more. So have to be wary of the tools, I guess, sometimes is the way I think about it.
Right. If you automate a process that gives you 5 errors an hour, you can get 5 errors a minute. But so now you have compounded your problems by making it easier to do horrible things in a tool.
I like that. You will make it easier to do horrible things. I like that. I like that a lot. No, I don't like it. I like the phrase. I like the, that's absolutely my sentiment. So
you mentioned one of the challenges is in IT, we're seeing less role specialization. In what I call Bagile or bad Agile, we have teams that are trying to follow Agile or Scrum steps, but they haven't adopted or realized the cultural changes. And now we're adding in DevOps, and it's becoming DevOps and having horrible mistakes and problems there. How are you all helping groups and teams become effective at Agile and DevOps and some of these other practices? How do you support these teams? How are you helping them through both learning the new approach, but also helping them through some of the cultural and behavior changes that are needed for that to be successful?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because what truly happens with in those situations with our clients especially is you know, when we get somebody coming in from a coaching perspective or a training perspective, quite often it is we'd like to understand, or, you know, we need, Steve, I'm absolutely with you, the Scrum butts of the world. Well, we're Scrum, but we're not going to do this. You know, we're Scrum, but we don't really have time for demos, so we're just going to skip those. Well, why do you think it's important? To me, it all comes back down to the why. And from a training perspective and the people, the learners in the room, because, you know, Hans, you hit it right on the head. There are a couple of different levels or layers of things that occur here. There's an upper management-ish kind of layer that wants people to be trained to do it right, but then they're not willing to change what they expect. And what I mean by that is I was just working with a client that they want their teams should be agile and should be sprinting, and they've got a, you know, they've got velocity goals and they've got goals. Okay, you know, they've got to do all this stuff, but then they also have to report to the PMO, and they have to go back for funding, and they have to hit their phase gate reviews for implementation.
Well, they have to make sure that they comply with legal and regulatory compliance as well in some industries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, what are you doing?
Yeah. So one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to make Agile a little more practical. And so we call our style or our version of Agile, it's not Scrum Bud or it's not anything in particular like that. What we're looking at is what we call Agilicious, because Agile is a lot of different flavors. It's not just Scrum, it's all of these other different, and yeah, I'm sorry, it always goes to food with me. So we're a little bit more Agilicious, and it's about hybridizing Agile, selecting the flavor that works for you. So one of the things that we've done to kind of answer this need for individuals as well as organizations is we've recently launched some Agile certifications. Agile certificates, sorry, we're not a certification body. We can't certify you if you do classes with us. You can't call yourself a certified Scrum Master, but you will be a heck of a lot smarter than when you started. And so we have, and the way I kind of think about it is with our Agile certificate program, we have 18, almost 20 classes where we've added a couple. I think when we started, we were developing 17, updating or creating new classes on specific Agile topics. And then within those Agile topics, these are half-day classes, we put together little chunks of 6 courses that count as a certificate. And this certificate, you will have, back to university talk here for a second, you'll have a major. You'll have an emphasis, right? So if you are a product owner type person that you need to be looking at vision and strategy, there's a set of courses for that. Agile BA, there's a set of courses for that. Agile practitioner that you're not quite sure, but you want to know enough about Agile that you can get into one of those roles. I think we have Agile Project Manager as well, Paul. That's a little less my area, so I have to be careful.
The Agile Project
Should
Manager.
not do anything project management related. We have covered
Scrum Master as well.
Yep, Scrum Master as well. So this really is looking at all of those disciplines, because I think that's the other thing that when we talk about being a jack of all trade, one of the things that we kind of lose there is, well, it's not that it's lost, but a lot of the Agile purist organizations and training companies out there. And I know people in this industry. They're some of my best friends on the planet. But when you're an Agile purist and you're doing it this way or you're doing it wrong, what you lose is the fact that I have how much experience and you have how much experience in whatever discipline you chose to specialize in. As a project manager, you're so valuable. As a business analyst, you're still valuable. As a developer, you're so valuable. All of those skills are still valuable and still have to happen. So we're taking the right pieces and parts and saying, don't forget how to do this. Here's how to do it more Agile-like. And to get into that mindset of do what works for you. Paul talked about your team has a personality. Your company has a personality. You have to develop all of this, figure it all out together. And so you need that team level understanding, individual level understanding, and you have to be able to speak to that upper level to talk about the mindset shift and how people should be changing how they do their work and how we can support that, how upper management can support how those teams are working, rather than just throwing more phase gates in front of you because, we're Agile, so we need to check in on you more often. That's not how it's supposed to work. So how can we adjust that?
Yeah, and I like to use the analogy of it's a factory and it's a factory floor and there's a conveyor belt and the conveyor belt is moving along there, and what happens or what needs to happen on a manufacturing floor is that you keep the conveyor belt running, that everyone understands their part of the process. They understand what they need to do, how it works, what the handoffs are between them, and move it forward. And that's the probably the dirty little secret of all of Agile, is that it is in fact a process that you yourself, your team, your organization puts together that works best for them. We're not all in manufacturing. We're not all in banking, and we're not all in finance or retail or science or aerospace, or we're not all NASA
delivery.
People.
Sorry, it's all about
delivery, grocery stores. We all have these different flavors, right? And that's Agilicious. That's Agilicious. There are many different flavors of Agile, and we talk about that in our classes, that there are at least 18 different flavors of Agile. And you know what? Make your own flavor. There's nothing There's no law that says that you as an organization cannot create your own special flavor of Agile. There's no restriction. No one's going to come, there's no Agile police that are come knocking on your door at 6 a.m. arresting you because you've got some new flavor. Absolutely. Go for it. Do it.
Call it what it is. And it also goes to the statement that even if you're not Agile, fully Agile, or you're kind of sort of Agile, or you're sort of kind of Scrum, but whatever, that's okay. Do what works. And my favorite way of writing stakeholder requirements, even in a waterfall world, I use user stories. Oh, I know, I said it. I use user stories as stakeholder requirements because that's what they are.
Horror, shock.
Right? I know, horror, shock.
It's okay to use Agile and waterfall techniques together. It's okay.
I don't know. I'm going to take away you don't have a BA card, so I'll take away your PM card for that. I joke about that all the time. I tell people I will not take away your BA card. Bob took mine away once. I made him give it back. We fought about something. I won.
Well, and Steve mentions that a lot of leadership doesn't understand what it takes to deliver products successfully. And that can be a big issue. And piggybacking on that, and I think transitioning into our next subject, one of the things I realized in the research and advisory work I was doing for the Infotech group was that we often needed to start with a orientation or training for the leadership team. We developed a series of one-day workshops to help leaders understand what was coming and how the culture of the organization and their behaviors needed to change to empower teams and support it. And as we think about this delivery pipeline, or as Paul said, the conveyor belt in the factory that's moving work through at a sustainable, not crazy, but sustainable pace, it makes a big difference what we're feeding into that conveyor belt or what we're feeding into that delivery engine. And that's really where product owners and product managers are supposed to come in. And we've seen, I think, a little bit of a conflict between true product owners or even IT product owners or service managers and the Scrum product owner role, who may just be reorganizing a backlog. So they're a proxy for product ownership. They don't actually own anything. So what are you seeing in the product ownership space, and how do we help other people who are moving into that role, maybe from a business analysis or project management background? Now they're moving into a product ownership role where they now own not only delivery, but also potentially the product scope and functionality.
Yes.
How do you help people adjust to this new role?
I think this is kind of where I feel like I spend a lot of my time in this space right now. I had a really interesting call earlier this week, and so it's very, very top of mind for me that it's talking about a couple of different disciplines or concepts, and we have to remember that at their purest form, none of these things are synonyms for each other. All right, I'll get to the words in a second. But the actual disciplines are supposed to be separate, or at least they were meant to be at some point. And if you're going to blend them, you have to understand how and why you're blending and what the goal is. So therefore, if you personally are going to be in one of those roles that's blended, you are fulfilling both disciplines and making it work the way you need to. And so the disciplines that I see a lot of, a lot of overlap in is, of course, business analysis or business analyst and product owner. That's been kind of this smushed up kind of a thing for a while. Bob Prentice, our colleague, always called it the po' boy. I always call it the BAPO, because the BA and the PO, if those roles are separated, and I know there's no such thing as a BA in Agile, but don't get me started. That's a conversation for another time. I get feisty about that one. So we're going to just pretend that they are separate roles that work well together. But you have to understand who is doing the product owner stuff and what that means. And should a BA be a product owner or a proxy, and what will work and what won't? I have seen it work, but that's when there's a clear delineation and an understanding that when I'm doing business analysis stuff, this is what my goal is. And when I'm working as a product owner, I do these other things, right? But then the bigger gap, or not gap, it's an overlap actually, that's occurring right now is product ownership and product management. And so product management as a separate discipline is very focused on marketing, not just advertising, but where does this product, what's the vision for this product over the next 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years? What's the strategic importance of this product for a specific industry, or, for our product within the marketplace, within, from a company perspective? Why should the company invest money in our product? And so shifting into this product focus, that's where a product manager is making decisions at that higher level. Now, a product owner, normally speaking, or again, if you go into that purist format, a product owner is that business representation for an Agile team. And I've worked with folks, the client that Paul and I were very recently working with, they were both product manager and product owner. So they were making all of the financial decisions, making all of the metric tracking decisions, getting money for their products, financing, within the whole big pot of the company's budget. They were focusing in that way. And they were also working with multiple teams to get the products built and deployed. But that's right there is a little bit of whiplash. So am I looking into the future, or am I down here getting stuff done? And that can be really stressful for one person to be in that role. And then of course you add into that, if you were looking, future facing product manager, getting work done and fulfilling that roadmap or whatever, product owner, and then a business analyst who understands the technology and is working more directly with an Agile team. I mean, there's so much overlap there that it can be a little confusing in general. Right.
Paul, you want to chime in, and then I'm going to challenge Jen a bit on that one, because I think we disagree quite a bit.
I'm sure. I touched the tip of the iceberg, so let's see if Paul can straighten out my words, and then you feel free to challenge me, and then I'll fight you.
So this gets down to strategic versus tactical, right? Putting the gorilla in the refrigerator and keeping the conveyor belt running. That's what this gets down to. The poor gorilla. I always use that example. But when you're thinking strategically, you're thinking about, not so much on the detail side. You're still at 60,000 feet. You're putting a direction together. You're putting a path, a product roadmap. You're putting the features and capabilities that you want to see in the future. You're setting the direction of where you want to go. You're putting it on a map. If you're going to take a vacation, where are you going on vacation? You've got some clue, an idea about where you want to go and why. Mm-hmm. And that's the strategic part of it, and it's the age-old question about how do you put a gorilla in a refrigerator? You open the door, you put the gorilla in, and you close the door. That's the strategy. It's that, and it sounds overly simplified, but it's really not. There's a different type of thinking there that needs to happen, because is that the direction that do you really want to put that gorilla in the refrigerator would be the question, right? And then you also have to think about the consequences of that. If now you need to put the giraffe in the refrigerator, what do you need to do? You need to open the door, take the gorilla out, put the giraffe in, and close the door, so that there's a sequence of events that are linked together. You have to have that thinking about how things are going to be linked together from a strategy perspective. And then finally, the consequences. So if the Lion King calls an animal conference, which animal did not show up at the conference? It was the giraffe, because he was in the refrigerator. He couldn't go to the conference. The gorilla was at the conference, but the giraffe wasn't, because the giraffe was in the refrigerator. So that's the strategic thinking. Then you have the tactical thinking, which is, the step by step, detail by detail, data by data sort of approaches. And that's the conveyor belt that's moving along. And the conversation that I had last week, granted, it was after 2 whiskeys, truth be told, and we were having this very heated discussion about why Agile does not seem to be efficient and why it doesn't seem to work well in that particular organization. And I said, listen, if you put crap on the belt, you're not going to go anywhere. You have to put the stuff on your belt in your factory that's well thought out and moving toward where you need to go. And, so that was a sort of, conversation that I've been trying to have with folks is like, listen, you need this product owner, you need this product manager to take control of your product, to set its strategic direction, get the product roadmap out there, get the story out there, get where it is they're going, look at total cost of ownership, look at the ROI and the investment. Are they choosing the right technology? Do they have the right approach to UX? Are they doing the right marketing? And all of that stuff, all combined together, is the strategy piece. And that's a big role, and it's a very tough role.
And there's a level of responsibility and trust that comes in there as well, because if the product manager or the strategic person has made the decision that the gorilla no longer needs to be in the refrigerator, and I don't know if I'm going to get this analogy right, but we're going to try. So somebody somewhere decided, the product manager decided, we don't need the gorilla in the refrigerator anymore. It needs to be the giraffe, right? So they are going to go ahead and put we figure it out. That's the new goal. We get the giraffe in the refrigerator. We've talked about the consequences. It's okay. We'll fill in the giraffe later about the Lion King situation. But then somebody else comes in and says, well, we actually need both the giraffe and the gorilla to be in the refrigerator. The refrigerator needs to be blue. And if it's not blue in 3 days, then we're pulling your funding. So that turns into some other and it's the equivalent of that leadership change in goal, or, we thought that the finish line was giraffe and refrigerator. And we were working towards our goal, and giraffe and refrigerator was going to get us closer to that goal. But now maybe it's not a refrigerator, and now it's the dishwasher, and it's over here instead, right? It's a complete and total change coming from leadership, company leadership, that I'm thinking about goalposts moving. And that's where, from a product management perspective, and it's not just for product managers, it's the trust in teams and making the right decisions to achieve those goals and allowing the time to let them happen, right? Just because we're agile doesn't mean you're going to see a whole new system in 2 weeks because we're doing 2 week sprints. It's still going to take us time to get there.
And I think it's also stating your goals more clearly. I think that the conversation that I've had with a few folks at the management level and up has been, are your goals clear enough? Does this actually make sense? And having a strategic analyst, a business analyst, looking at their goals and trying to figure out how they can be achieved, if they are achievable, and kind of the best approach to that. And having that strategic sort of thinker in your organization is a good thing, because again, if you have somebody strategically thinking, the stuff that you put on the belt to move forward through the factory is not going to be crap. It's going to be well thought out. There's going to be something to it. It's going to be on your, not to say that your product roadmap doesn't change, because it does. It changes hopefully only once every 6 months, but you never know. Mm-hmm. Market changes quite considerably, quite quickly these days. But you've got somebody in control of that strategy. And I think the pain that most people are feeling is that we're constantly doing this, switching lanes all over the place to try and get ahead, but we're not getting ahead. All we're doing is changing lanes. And that's where the strategy is so important for me.
But Agile is responding to change even late in the cycle. Right. Sorry, I had to channel some of what everybody said.
The change is willy-nilly and out of control and unfocused.
Yeah, and that I think is where some level Agile has done a little bit of a disservice to focusing so much on responding to change. Yeah. Doesn't mean that you can ignore the strategic side, and that's supposed to be the product owner side. And so product owners do need to have the understanding of product management, because really, and I know Hans still wanted to so I'm opening this up that here I'm going to repeat a little bit and see if this is where Hans is going to go. I'm not even guessing, but I bet he's going to go there, because I always think of the product owner as I'm going to say serving two masters, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but there are two major aspects of a product owner role. One is this way, facing an agile team and working with the team and helping the team to understand these are the goals, this is what we're building next, all right? So working with an agile team to get shit done, right? The product owner also does this, which is, I understand the market, I understand the strategy, I understand where we're gonna fit, I understand all of this, generating the excitement for the next big thing. I'm helping these guys to build it, but I understand all of this. All of this is product management. Whether I'm a product owner doing both, or if I'm just a product manager and I'm working with a product owner to do the other's part, is a whole other story.
Yeah.
So we have to remember that, again, it's another skill set that many of us in IT didn't have to begin with, because realize when Agile started really taking off from an IT perspective, a lot of companies that looked at, oh, we're going to go Agile. Ooh, so we don't have anybody who's a Scrum Master, so we're going to have the project manager do that, because it's a lot of facilitation and reporting. So we're going to let the PMs do that. And we don't have anybody who can really understand requirements and customers on the business side, so we're just going to let the BA do that. So we'll let them be a PO in name only. And they'll still have to get decisions from somewhere else. So you've already chopped them off at the knees. And, it's like, wait, why isn't this all working? Because we haven't done the complete mind shift, that mindset shift, and we haven't given the right responsibilities to the right people and figured out how to make this work for us. I feel like we missed some of that, right?
Yeah.
And Steve says responding to change as long as there is value to it, right?
Yeah,
and I see value, but it's not strategic value. its value in this moment, which isn't strategic.
Exactly. Right? And that's what that strategic role is doing, is managing that organizational change, should you be going down that road. Hans, did you have anything to say about our happy little friend, the product owner, product manager, before we run out of time?
I know, I'm afraid.
We're doing all of the talking and you, the host, haven't said a word.
I know. Well, that's just like, I'm going to let them dig a hole and see what happens.
No. That's why I have wonderful people. So we'll wrap this up because, we'll try and hold close to the time. Everything you all have said is true. And I think why so many organizations, so many leaders are confused when they're shifting to an agile mindset is because they're confusing the terms and they're trying to flatten everything out too far.
Yep.
The only distinct product owner role is the Scrum product owner role if you happen to be doing Scrum. Yep. If you are doing SAFe, it's called something else. And you've got all these release train managers and other crazy things. But in essence, and because I shared a lot of the same thoughts until I started doing the research going into Build a Better Product Owner that I did for Infotech Research Group. And one of the amazing things I found was it doesn't matter if you're a product manager, a product owner, a service manager, a service owner, an application owner. It doesn't matter what you call it. The core of that job, what you need to do, the ability to plan and using market research and user research and figure out what do we need to do to enhance that product or service over time. And then on the opposite end, how am I measuring to see if I got the intended value? What was the cost structure? Where were my expenses? As Paul said, what is my TCO? And then using that to feed back into my product roadmap. And then the counter to that is I also have to be part of the product delivery lifecycle. The only way we can make changes is to individual products, individual applications, individual services. So I have to be able to work with the team, work with my PM, my BA, my Scrum Master, whoever it is, to get those changes made effectively so that we can evolve. And each individual product has to be organized and grouped into product families so that we have a way of translating that enterprise strategy, those enterprise goals, down to the product level, even if it's an internal product where we can make some of those changes.
Absolutely.
If not, we have the exact situation where we have the helicopter execs who pop into a project and start making feature changes instead of working through the structure to determine what do we need to change to make these capabilities better? What are the people, processes, and tools that carry that out so that our product owners can then make the decision of how do I reprioritize my roadmap? And then at the next level of detail, my backlog to make those changes to achieve that value.
Yeah, and just to kind of step in here, when you said products within an organization, that right there is the key to it all. And this is what some organizations are now discovering, is that, okay, now you've got all these products, they're now a honeycomb. And all of these things touch each other, and they're all integrated with each other, and they all work together. And you have to understand all of the dependencies between them and how they relate to each other. And these product owners have to work through the strategies to make sure that, if I change data here, it's not going to hose up somebody down the line.
Sorry, Paul, but what we have to remember here is that even within, if it's a honeycomb structure, it's not trading the old school silos that we had for a different kind of silo, right? We're not just shifting now to product silos, because you can't be in your little cell of your honeycomb and I'm going to do these things and I don't care if it hurts Paul's product. Well, no, I have to care if it hurts Paul's product, because sooner or later his product's going to hurt mine. We still have to actually talk to each other. And so that shift to products, setting up what a product is, I think is critical. And I think I think missteps can occur. I have a couple of clients actually that, and I'm not naming names, but one in particular that I'm thinking of, their Agile teams are broken up by, there is one that does APIs and there's one that does databases. And so when a project comes in and gets dispersed to the Agile teams, and those are just two of the examples, those are the two that I always remember, because to me that makes no sense as an Agile team. And it works for them, but where they struggle is they have to prioritize not by what's in their backlog to be done. They have to prioritize like 2 steps higher to project at requests that this API is necessary for this sort of a thing, or this database change is necessary for something else, because they're specialized within their team and not specialized across, like focused on this is this one widget thing that we build. They're focused. It's kind of like saying we have an Agile team that's all BAs. I don't know that would work. That's just going back to a different style of waterfall, calling it something else.
The trend that's happening is what's called microservices and micro products. Mm-hmm. Teams are only 4 to 5 people, and they're in this honeycomb situation, and they all have to work together, and they all have to strategize together. And you've got, the people in the honeycomb are on their little happy little conveyor belt. But again, it's getting stuff put on the conveyor belt that looks at the whole hive. And you're not in a silo. You can't do things on your own little world. It's no longer possible. And a lot of the larger companies that I deal with are definitely going to this honeycomb model. DevOps is sort of driving them toward this microservice, micro product role, because it's easier to support and that kind of thing. But that's another trend that's coming out there.
I feel like it's all back to why. From a company perspective to a product perspective or whatever, why? I've talked to clients that we want to be more agile. We want to foster this agile mindset. We want to foster where I just talked to somebody this week. We want to shift from project focus to product focus. Why do you want to do that? And I asked very specifically why and what skill sets are missing from your team right now that is the reason you're talking to me about training. Tell me why on the change and why on the responsibilities, and then we can figure something out for you. So that's kind of the Uncommon League advantage, to give us a little bit of a plug there as well, because that's what we care about. We care about making something that works for you, and that's what Agilicious is all about, and practical Agile. And we'll give you the skills to be successful no matter what you want to do. And you'll laugh a little bit, or at least get to make fun of me and my ridiculous cough that just won't go away.
Well, hey, for everyone who's joining us, you can see why I love going to conferences and events with Paul, Jen, and the rest of our, we'll call it the Road family. It's a tolerance for everyone's perspective, because we're all saying the same things, but from a little different perspective. And by talking through it, working through it, we figure out where the holes are, because that's why we do what we do. We're trying to fill the holes. We're trying to help groups and teams be more effective. And Paul was just mentioning the challenge of how do you work in a very shared service, microservice, very honeycombed environment. The research project that we kicked off today, we're actually building a framework to help groups structure and tier and organize the collaboration between their products and services to make sure that that enterprise strategy at the top gets properly decomposed down to the level where you can actually affect it. So if you really enjoyed the show today, and Jen and Paul, let me know. I'll definitely have them on again, especially if this really resonated with what you're looking for. And for everyone who really liked what you said, and how you're out there helping companies, helping groups, teams, even individuals, how can they get in touch with you to learn more? And I think that's probably the best place we could wrap today.
Yeah, check us out at theuncommonleague.com. We got some great stuff out there. We just started our blog on Agile questions, and we've got a backlog of 250 plus questions already. In a very short period of time. We're having fun trying to get those out the door.
Absolutely. Our global coaching is something that we do, and that's where some of our backlog questions are coming from. We do live during the week coaching. So if you want access to us to ask us questions, help with a specific project, or just, hey, we want to learn something new, we're doing that as well. So that's a great thing to check out on our site. And of course, our classes. We try to have fun. We play trivia.
Absolutely. Get the perspective, get the good education. It's all right there on theuncommonleague.com.
Fantastic. Well, Paul and Jen, thank you so much for coming, and after a long day, adding a little bit extra. Really appreciate it. To everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy, and hope you're doing well. Let us know some of the topics that interest you, and I'll do my best to find smarter people than me to join the show and talk about it. Thank you so much. Everyone, have a great evening.